say when Kwame arrived in the village of Asamankizi, even the baobab trees stood straighter. The old women stopped grinding their the young men abandoned their farm tools the children forgot the games they were playing. Everyone turned to watch as this magnificent specimen of humanity strode through the dusty village square, his muscles rippling like the Niger River at sunset, his smile bright enough to shame the midday sun. But as the elders would later whisper over their palm wine, not all that glitters is gold, and not all that gleams with sweat brings good fortune. It was the dry season when Kwame came to Asamankizi, carrying nothing but a woven mat, a calabash of water, and confidence that could fill the Atlantic Ocean. The harmattan winds had been particularly harsh that year, leaving the villagers tired, their bodies aching from the endless labor of survival. Kwame set up his training ground beneath the ancient Iroko tree in the center of the village, the very same tree where the elders held council, where marriages were blessed, and where justice was dispensed. Some murmured that this was inappropriate, but when Kwame removed his shirt and began demonstrating what he called the exercises of the ancestors, all complaints died on parched lips. Brothers and sisters. His voice boomed across the square, smooth as she buttered and twice as appealing. Look at you, bent backs, tired eyes, weak limbs. Is this how our forefathers conquered kingdoms? Is this how our mothers carried the weight of nations on their heads while dancing? The villagers looked at each other, suddenly aware of their stooped postures and weary bodies. I have traveled from the mountains of the moon to the shores of Lake Chad, Kwame continued, executing a perfect squat that made several young women fan themselves despite the morning coolness. I have learned the ancient secrets of strength, the forgotten wisdom of vitality, the lost knowledge of the perfect body. Chief Okonkwo, who was watching from his compound, stroked his gray beard thoughtfully. There was something about this stranger that did unsit right with him, something in the way. Kwame's eyes flickered when he smiled, like a candle flame before it consumes the moth. But the chief's daughter, Ama, was already walking toward the Iroko tree, and behind her, half the village followed. Within 3 days, Kwame had transformed the village square into what he called the Temple of Transformation. He organized the villagers into groups: the farmers, the traders, the fishermen, even the palm wine tappers. Each morning at dawn, before the roosters finished their crowing, the sound of clapping hands and stomping feet echoed through up, down, up, up. Down Kwame would shout, demonstrating movements that seemed impossible for ordinary mortals. Feel the power of your ancestors flowing through your veins. And the miraculous thing was, it worked. Or seemed to. Within 2 weeks, old Papa Mansa, who hadn't bent to tie his own sandals in 5 years, could touch his toes. Mama Abina, the baker whose knees creaked like old doors, was jumping up and down like a grasshopper. The young men who had struggled to carry single bags of yams were now hoisting 2 at a time, flexing their growing muscles for any young woman who would watch. The village was transformed. People walked taller. They smiled more. They spoke of Kwame as if he were Anansi the spider himself, come to weave magic into their mundane lives. But Chief Okonkwo noticed other things. He noticed how Kwame always positioned himself where everyone could see him, like a peacock spreading its feathers. He noticed how the instructor's personal consultations with female villagers grew longer and more frequent. He noticed how Kwame never actually worked, never farmed, never fished, never helped with any communal labor yet. His calabash was always full of the finest foods, his sleeping mat cushioned with the softest cloths. He gives us strength, Father Ama said when the chief voiced his concerns. What is wrong with that? A river that flows only in one direction eventually runs dry. My daughter, the chief replied, but Ama had already turned away, rushing back to the evening training session. Chief Okonkwo sat alone in his compound, troubled by dreams he couldn't yet name. He decided to consult Nana Akasua, the oldest woman in the village, whose wisdom was said to predate the very soil of Assam. Nana Akasua lived at the edge of the village, in a compound shaded by mango trees older than anyone could remember. When Chief Okonkwo arrived, she was already preparing 2 cups of bitter leaf tea, as if she had known he was coming. Sit! Okonkwo, she said without looking up. Your face carries questions your mouth hasn't yet learned to ask. The chief sat on the worn wooden stool and accepted the tea. It's about the stranger, the one they called the gym instructor. Kwame, Nana Akasua said, and there was something sharp in the way she pronounced his name, like biting into a pepper. Yes, I have been watching him too. She took a long sip of her tea, her ancient eyes gazing past the chief, past the mango trees, into some distance only she could see. Do you know why the spider builds its web in the corner? The chief shook his head. Because that is where the flies forget to look. They see the open air, the freedom, the light hand, they fly straight into the trap. You think Kwame is dangerous? Chief Okonkwo asked. Nana Akosua laughed, a sound like dry leaves rustling. Dangerous? Oh no, Chief. Dangerous is the leopard who stalks in the night to fear it, to protect yourself. Kwame is something else entirely. He is the sweet mango that rots from the inside, the beautiful snake whose venom you don't feel until it's too late. He is not dangerous. He is seductive. And that, my chief, is far worse. That night, Chief Okonkwo couldn't sleep. He lay on his mat, listening to the sounds of the village sounds that had changed since Kwame's arrival. There was more laughter now, true, but there was also something else. Something he couldn't quite name, a kind of ... hunger, as if the village had tasted something intoxicating and now couldn't stop consuming it. Meanwhile, Kwame was holding court at the training ground. Even though night had fallen and the exercises had supposedly ended hours ago, a crowd had gathered, mesmerized as he told stories of his travels, each tale more incredible than the last. He spoke of wrestling with lions in the Serengeti, of swimming across the Zambezi River with crocodiles snapping at his heels, of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in a single afternoon. With each story, he flexed a different muscle, and with each flex, the crowd grew more interested. Tomorrow, Kwame announced, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that somehow carried to every ear. Tomorrow I will teach you the ultimate exercise, the one that will make you irresistible to everyone you meet, the one that will give you power beyond your wildest dreams. The crowd erupted in excitement. But, Kwame continued, raising his hand for silence, this knowledge comes at a price. Each family must bring me their finest offering, their best chicken, their freshest fish, their most valuable cloth. This is the tradition of the masters from whom I learned. Chief Okonkwo, who had been watching from the shadows, felt his heart sink. So there it was, the trap finally revealed. But when he looked at the faces of his people, he saw only eagerness, only desire. They were already planning what they would bring, already imagining the power they would gain. The next morning, the village square looked like a marketplace. Families lined up with their offerings, each trying to outdo the other. Kwame sat beneath the iroko tree like a king receiving tribute, his smile wide and satisfied. Papa Mensa brought his last rooster, the one he had been saving to trade for medicine. Mama Nabina brought the cloth she had woven for her daughter's wedding. Young Kofi brought the fishing net his father had left him, the one that had fed his family for 3 generations, and Kwame accepted it all with gracious humility, promising each donor that they would receive the ultimate exercise, the secret that would change their lives forever. Chief Okonkwo watched, his jaw clenched, as his own daughter Amma approached Kwame with her mother's gold earrings, the only precious thing she owned, a family heirloom passed down through 5 generations. Stop! The chief's voice rang out across the square like a thunderclap. The crowd turned, startled. Chief Okonkwo strode forward, his elder's staff striking the ground with each step. Amma, step away from that man. His daughter looked confused, hurt even. But father, this is for the ultimate exercise. Don't you want me to be strong? Strong? Chief Okonkwo's voice was gentle now, sad. My daughter, look around you. Look at what we have become. He turned to address the crowd. People of Asamankizai asked UN, did we become so weak that we needed a stranger to tell us how to be strong? When did we forget that our ancestors built kingdoms without ultimate exercises? When did we decide that our worth could be measured in the shine of another man's muscles? The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some looked down at their offerings as if seeing them for the first time. But Kwame was already on his feet, his charming smile never wavering. Chief Okonkwo, with all respect to your age and position, you speak from fear. Fear of change, fear of improvement, fear of a future where your people are stronger than you ever were. I speak from wisdom, the chief replied, wisdom that knows the difference between strength and vanity, between improvement and illusion, between a teacher and a trickster. Kwame's smile finally faltered, just for a moment, and in that moment, Chief Okonkwo saw something flicker in the younger man's eyes, something desperate, something hungry, something that confirmed everything Nana Akosua had warned him about. Prove it then, Kwame said, his voice taking on an edge. If you are so wise, old man, if your traditional ways are so superior, then demonstrate it. Show us your strength, or admit that you are simply jealous of what I have brought to this village. The crowd murmured. This was unexpected. This was entertainment of a different kind. Chief Okonkwo felt the weight of every eye upon him. He was not a young man. His muscles had softened with age, his joints stiffened with the passing seasons. In a test of physical strength, Kwame would surely win. But then, Nana Kasua's voice cut through the tension like a knife through butter. The young bull thinks strength is in the horn, but the old buffalo knows it is in the wisdom of when to charge and when to wait. She had materialized at the edge of the crowd, leaning on her walking stick, her presence commanding despite her small, bent frame. Kwame, son of nowhere, you speak of strength, but I see no strength in you. I see only mirrors and smoke. Kwame turned his charm on her immediately. Grandmother, surely you of all people can appreciate the transformations I have brought to this village. The joy, the vitality. But Nana Akasua cut him off with a wave of her gnarled hand. Joy? I see addiction. Vitality? I see dependence. You have made these people believe they need you, that without your exercises, they are nothing. That is not the work of a teacher. Young man, that is the work of a parasite. The word hung in the air like a curse. Kwame's beautiful face twisted with anger for just a moment before the mask of charm returned. Strong words from someone who contributes nothing but old superstitions to this village. Nana Akasua smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Then let us see whose way is stronger. Not through muscles and sweat, but through truth. Tell us, Kwame, of the perfect body, where did you come from? What village claims you as their son? What family taught you these ancient secrets? The crowd leaned in, suddenly realizing they knew nothing about this man they'd been following so devotedly. Kwame's smile was still in place, but his eyes had gone cold. I come from many places. I belong to no single village. I am a citizen of all Africa, learning and teaching wherever I go. A convenient answer? Nana Akasua replied. Let me tell you where you really come from. Kwame, you come from the last village, and the one before that, and the one before that. You are not a teacher. You are a locust, moving from place to place, consuming the goodwill and resources of trusting people, leaving nothing but empty promises and emptier calabashes in your wake. These are just the bitter words of an old woman who hates to see change, Kwame said, but his voice had lost its smoothness. The crowd was beginning to look uncertain now, the spell starting to break. Is that so? Nana Akasua continued. Then tell us about the ultimate exercise. Demonstrate it for us now, before you collect these people's treasures. Show us this power you promise. Kwame hesitated, and in that hesitation, the truth became clear to everyone watching. There was no ultimate exercise. There never had been. It was just another carrot, another promise, another way to extract more from people who had already given too much. Papa Mensa stepped forward and quietly picked up his rooster. Mama Abina retrieved her wedding cloth. One by one, the villagers reclaimed their offerings, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and anger. Wait. Kwame's voice had lost all its charm now, revealing the desperation beneath. You don't understand. I have given you real results. You are stronger now. You can't deny that. Chief Okonkwo spoke, his voice firm but not unkind. We don't deny that we have benefited from exercise. Kwame, movement is good. Activity is healthy. But we don't need you to do what our ancestors have always known. We don't need to pay tribute to someone who produces nothing, who builds nothing, who gives nothing but takes everything. Our farmers work the fields and feed us, the chief continued. Our fishermen brave the waters and sustain us. Our weavers create beauty. Our storytellers preserve our history. Our healers tend our sick. What do, Kwame, besides stand in the center and demand to be admired? Besides, make us feel weak so that you can feel necessary? The iroko tree seemed to rustle its agreement, though there was no wind. Kwame looked around at the faces that had once gazed at him with adoration, now looking at him with clear eyes. The mask of the perfect instructor, the irresistible trainer, was crumbling. Without the worship, without the attention, Kwame seemed to physically shrink, becoming just another man handsome still, but hollow. You will regret this, Kwame said, but his threat sounded more like a child's petulance than any real warning. In a week, your bodies will return to weakness. In a month, you'll remember how I made you feel alive. You'll wish you had listened to me. Nana Akasua laughed again, that dry leaf sound. Oh, Kwame, you still don't understand. We were always alive. We were always strong. You just convinced us to forget it for a while. By sunset, Kwame had gathered his woven mat and calabash and left Asamankizi, his perfect muscles carrying him toward the next village. The next group of people hungry for easy transformation. The next harvest of admiration and tribute. The villagers watched him go with a strange mixture of feelings, certainly, but also a little embarrassment at how completely they had been fooled. That evening Chief Okongwo called a gathering beneath the Iroko tree. "My people," he said, "we have learned something valuable today. Though the lesson cost us nothing but pride, we learned that true strength does not come from a stranger's exercises or a trickster's promises. It comes from our own labor, our own wisdom, our own community." Papa Mensa spoke up, his voice humble. "But Chief, we did feel stronger. The exercises did help our bodies, and that is also a truth," the chief acknowledged. "Movement is good. Working our bodies is wise. But we can do this ourselves. We always could. We don't need someone like Kwame to lead us. We can encourage each other, teach each other, support each other not for tribute or worship, but because we are a community." And so the people of Asamankizi continued to exercise in the mornings beneath the Iroko tree. But now it was different. Papa Mensa, who had regained his flexibility, taught the stretches to others. Young Kofi, who had grown stronger, helped the elderly with their movements. Mama Abina turned the exercises into songs, making them easier to remember and more joyful to perform. They did it together, as they had always done everything else through cooperation and shared effort, not through dependence on a single charismatic figure. Ama returned her mother's gold earrings to their place of honor in the family compound. "I'm sorry, Father," she said to Chief Okong. "I was so eager to become something more that I forgot I was already enough." The chief hugged his daughter. "We all forgot for a while, my child. That is the power of someone who knows how to mirror our deepest insecurities back to us. But now we remember, and we will not forget again." Nena Akosua, sitting in her usual spot, observing everything, smiled to herself and sipped her bitter leaf tea. She had seen men like Kwame before in her long life. She would probably see them again. They came in different forms, sometimes as trainers, sometimes as prophets, sometimes as merchants with miracle cures. They all had the same beautiful surface and the same empty core. They all fed on the same human weaknesses, the same desire to be special without effort, to be transformed without transformation. But she had also seen communities like Asamankizi before, communities that could be fooled for a while but ultimately found their way back to truth. And that gave her hope, because the real strength, she knew, was not in never falling for the trick. It was in recognizing the trick once it was revealed and having the courage to walk away from it, even when the illusion was so very, very appealing. Months later, a traveler came through Asamankizi and mentioned that he had seen Kwame in a village 3 days' journey to the east. "He's there now," the traveler said, "teaching something he calls the 5 sacred movements or some such. The people there worship him like a god. They've given him the best house in the village." The people of Asamankizi shook their heads, feeling pity for that other village, but knowing that they, too, would eventually learn. Some lessons, painful as they are, cannot be taught. They must be experienced. Chief Okonko added another proverb to the village's collection, one that would be passed down to future generations. The gym instructor with the perfect body may draw every eye, but the farmer with the calloused hands feeds every mouth. Know the difference, and you will never go hungry. And so the village continued, stronger in wisdom if not in vanity. Enriched by the lesson of the instructor, no one could resist until they did, because that is the way of truth. It may arrive late to the party. It may be less beautiful than illusion. It may lack the shimmer of easy promises. But it endures long after the charming strangers have moved on to their next harvest of hope. Under the ancient Iroko tree, where councils were held and justice dispensed and now morning exercises performed, the people of Asamankizi learned to find strength in themselves and each other, and that, the elders would say, pouring palm wine for the ancestors was the real ultimate exercise all along the simple, difficult, unglamorous work of building true power from within together, with no shortcuts and no showman required. The end, as they say, but also the beginning, because the best stories don't really end. They just teach us how to continue wiser and more aware into whatever comes next.